Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. It's great to be in Ahmedabad. And before I begin, I would like to thank my very gracious our hosts, the organizers of this event, for so kindly inviting me to speak to you on this August platform. I'm going to speak about science and its importance in human progress. Science is critical to human progress. So, if we look at the history of humanity, we see that the history of human advancement from the very beginning is the history of scientific development and technological development. Ask yourself this question: what is the signature characteristic of a successful culture, of a vibrant and rich culture? What is it? It is culture, it is art, and all of that. But can you have a vibrant, rich culture and art in a society that is backward, a society that is poor, a society that is downtrodden? You can't have that. You need scientific development for that. Rich culture can only emerge in a society that is materially progressive, that is materially advanced, that is prosperous. And material prosperity cannot happen without scientific advancement. So let's take a look at the history to see whether we can bear this out. And I like to begin at the very beginning. So let's begin at the very beginning. So we begin about 13.8 billion years ago, when all the matter, all the energy that we see around us was concentrated into a very small, tiny point, which we call a singularity. An infinitely dense, infinitely hot singularity, which we call colloquially the Big Bang singularity. Now, something made them expand in the so-called Big Bang. This happened 13.8 billion years ago. About 13.6 billion years ago, our home galaxy, the Milky Way, was formed. About 4.6 billion years ago, our sun, the star that we move around, was formed out of a protostellar disk. The Earth was formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Fast forward a little, about 3.77 billion years ago, the first life is known to have emerged on our planet. The age of dinosaurs begins about 250 million years before today. About 120 million years ago, the subcontinent of India detached from Africa and began its journey across the Indian Ocean towards Eurasia. And the collision happened about 30 to 10 million years before today. It is still happening. It gave rise to the Himalayas. While India was still in the Indian Ocean and traveling towards Eurasia, an impact event happened, the Chicxulub impact event that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs. Our avian dinosaur friends are still around us, in case you don't know, right? So this impact event happened 66 million years ago. That gave rise to the so-called Cenozoic era, the age of the mammals. We are mammals. So the first apes, hominids, emerged in the fossil record about 20 million years before today. The human chimpanzee divergence happens about 8 million years before today. And Homo sapiens, our ancestors, they first emerged in the fossil record. The first evidence of them is about 300,000 years before today in North Africa, Jebel Irhoud. That is the site in Algeria. So that is how old our species is. And if we look at how they were different from other hominin species, you would see they had better technology and they had better characteristics that gave them certain advantages. So the technological edge begins right there, 300,000 years ago. Then about 85,000 years before today, there was an out of Africa migration, which happened from the Bab el Mandeb Strait between Djibouti and Yemen. Then there was a crossover from Yemen, from the Arabian Peninsula into Persia through the Strait of Hormuz. From there, our ancestors went eastwards and settled down finally in the Indian subcontinent because the conditions were conducive for long-term settlement. Lots of rivers, great vegetation, and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at the stone tools, in the very early beginnings of the Homo sapiens occupation of Indian subcontinent, you had certain advancement that you could not see among the Neanderthals. And then you see significant progress happening over time. Technological progress, the stone tools, other tools, they improve over time. Then the first agriculture is known to have happened in the Indian subcontinent about 17,000 years before today in Sri Lanka. Now you will say that Sri Lanka is a different country, but at that time, because of the ice age, Sri Lanka was contiguous with India. So agriculture is technology, and it gave us a whole different lifestyle. Before we invented agriculture or discovered agriculture, our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. They used to hunt and they used to eat whatever they could find, and then they would go 2-3 days without food. But agriculture gave humans a food source that was reliable, carbohydrates, right? So that's what happened about 70 or so thousand years before today. Then you had rice cultivation, etc., in the Ganga Valley and so on. Then you have the dawn of actual civilization emerging in India about 10,000 or so years before today, according to the archaeological record. The oldest known archaeological site is Birana, 9,500 years before today. And that's when we see different technologies emerging over time. So this is in the Saraswati Sindhu Valley region, the Sapta Sindhu region, the so-called, it is present-day Punjab and the surrounding regions. So the mature phase of the Saraswati Sindhu phase of Indian civilization happens about 6,000, 5,000 years before today. It was a fully urbanized phase of Indian civilization. The city planning was better than Indian cities today. The drainage systems were better than Indian cities today. You had standardizations of weights and measures. Whether you go to a site in Shortugai, Afghanistan, or Oman, or Gujarat, or Madhya Pradesh, or Maharashtra, you will find the same standardization of weights and measures. That tells you it was a single civilization and a technologically advanced civilization. You had ports, you had harbors, you had hydro engineering. This is all in the archaeological record which cannot be denied. So the archaeologist Dr. S.R. Rao published a paper comparing the port at Lothal in Gujarat, not far from here, with the modern port at Visakhapatnam. And the port at Lothal, the ancient harbor at Lothal, which is about 5,000 years old, it compares favorably with the harbor at Visakhapatnam, which is even used by the Indian Navy today. So that is how advanced the technology was, that of our ancestors, 5,000, 6,000 years before today. You had dentistry, you had so many other things. And Indians were trading with other nations, with the Akkadian Empire, with the Middle East, even with Egypt, and India was gaining gold in return. So technological progress, scientific progress gave India material progress. And it gave India, the people of India, an incredibly superior lifestyle and living standards. And similarly, later on, you had technological advancements in places like Egypt. They also understood mathematics and geometry. They understood leverage, the principles of mechanics, statics, which allowed them to build this enormous monumental architecture, the pyramids and other things. So they had their own science and technology, which gave them the prosperity which we know they had. Then you had the Fertile Crescent, the Middle Eastern region. You had the Akkadian Empire, the Sumerian Empire, the Mesopotamian kingdoms, etc. They also had good science and technology. They also had good living standards. You had the Greeks, you had the Sumerians, you had the Persians, who were offshoots of Indians. Then you also had the Chinese. So every time you see a successful and prosperous civilization, you see scientific advancement, you see technological advancement. That is the hallmark of any successful civilization. Now going forward, we had universities across the length and the breadth of India, and all kinds of subjects were taught in these universities as in modern universities. You had pharmacology, toxicology, astronomy, and so much more. The oldest evidence, recorded evidence of a supernova explosion is from Kashmir, 4,600 or so years before today, or 4,600 BC perhaps. So that is the oldest known recorded evidence of a supernova. So Indians at that time were recording astronomical events. So it tells you how scientifically and technologically advanced the civilization was. So you had universities with all these advanced subjects. Now, about 1,000 years before today, there were these waves of invasions into India, the Turkic invasions, in which what happened is that these invaders, they came with certain scholars and translators who took away all the interesting books they found, books on Ayurveda, books on pharmacology, toxicology, books on metallurgy, books on astronomy, books on navigation, books on mathematics, and so on. Whatever they found of any interest, they took it away, and they were very candid in mentioning that all this knowledge came from India. Kitab al-Hisab al-Hind, that is very clear where it comes from. That's what al-Biruni called his book. So all this knowledge flowed out of India. Then the universities were destroyed, the Indian universities, and the knowledge slowly made its way to the West through the Arabic world. That's what happened. Now the Arabic world also kind of declined because of the Mongol invasion. But when this knowledge started taking root in Europe, that's when you had the beginnings, the very germination of the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution, which essentially begins in the Victorian era, around the time that Isaac Newton was alive and Edmund Halley and other people. So Isaac Newton is one of the most pivotal figures in scientific history. He either discovered or invented calculus, which had been discovered at least 100 years ago before in India. But he took calculus and he put forth a new law of gravitation, Newton's law of gravitation. And this was the first great unification of forces. Why do I say unification of forces? Because it was the first time that we realized that the force that causes an apple to fall to the ground is the same force that causes the movements, that governs the movements of the planets and the stars and the celestial objects in the sky. So this was the first great unification. Then the laws of thermodynamics were discovered, lots of other technological advancements happened, steam engine, the Carnot cycle, and all that. This gave rise to the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution in Europe, which in turn engendered the age of colonialism. They took this knowledge, they took this technology, they weaponized it, and they used it to conquer the world. They conquered the Americas, North America, South America, they conquered Africa, they conquered India, they tried to conquer China, Australia, all of that. And they enriched themselves at the expense of everybody else. So this technology made Europe incredibly prosperous. And there was this scientific revolution that was happening at the same time. Lots of new scientific discoveries happening every single decade. Then in the 19th century, you had a new unification, Maxwell's Laws, that unified electricity and magnetism. So you had many more advances happening. And as you can see, with these advances came more prosperity and more progress in our understanding of the universe. Then at the end of the 19th century, there was a problem that scientists were facing. The light bulb had just been invented, right? Now, in the light bulb, there's a metallic filament. You heat the metallic filament, it produces light of a certain color and a certain intensity. And nobody was able to figure out what is the relationship between the temperature, the intensity of the light, and the color of the light. Nobody was able to figure out. Until in the year 1900, Max Planck came up with the solution. That was the birth of quantum mechanics. The quantum. We discovered that electromagnetic radiation, photons, etc., do not have energy that can be continuous. They have energy that comes only in packets and in bunches of packets, which are called quanta. This was the quantum revolution. And then you have people like Einstein and Niels Bohr, Heisenberg, Schrödinger, and so many other people, De Broglie and others, who contributed to the quantum revolution. Everything that we enjoy in the world today, all the technology we enjoy, is thanks to quantum mechanics. You would not have telecommunications devices, cell phones, without quantum mechanics. You would not have laptops and computers without quantum mechanics. You would not have GPS without quantum mechanics. GPS satellites make use of atomic clocks, which have cesium transitions and rubidium transitions, which are governed by quantum mechanics. So all of the technology we enjoy today is largely due to quantum mechanics. And further, quantum mechanics was developed further into quantum field theory, which is one of the most successful theories ever. Then you had rocket science. So what happened is that in 1871, a new nation was born in Europe. It was called Germany. Before 1871, there was no Germany. There was no German nation. The great Iron Chancellor, Otto von Bismarck, unified this new nation and unleashed a set of reforms, including reforms in education. So education was made completely merit-based and science-based, which is what gave empowered so many young scientists to produce such great results. One of them was Max Planck. But later on, you had scientists like Einstein and many other German scientists like Heisenberg, Schrödinger, etc., who did so much great work in quantum mechanics. And the one common thread among all of these great scientists who gave birth to quantum mechanics, firstly, they did their work in a non-English language, either German or French. There was no English involved in this. Secondly, they did their best work, their most groundbreaking work in their 20s. They were all young men. And they were all made professors, even heads of department, in their 20s and early 30s. You can't imagine that happening in India today. So these are the conditions that gave rise to this incredible scientific ferment in the early 20th century. And then you have the Germans developing all kinds of other technologies, like aircraft, like rockets. The Germans are the pioneers of cruise missile technology, and the ballistic missile technology. The V1, the V2 rocket, etc. It is the Germans who developed this. And of course, they lost World War II. It was Werner von Braun who was one of the major pioneers of this technology. When the Germans lost World War II, many of their top rocket scientists and engineers were captured by the Americans, including the great Werner von Braun. It was called Operation Paperclip. And these people were transported to the US along with the captured rockets. And this is what gave birth to the American space program. Today, America's space program is the best in the world. It was thanks to these German scientists. But the Americans realized that the key to geopolitical supremacy was technology, cutting-edge technology, staying ahead of the others. The Soviets also captured some German scientists, rocket scientists, and that's what helped the Soviets build the Soviet rocket program, the space program. And the Soviet space program gave birth to the Chinese space program. It all started with Germany. It is India and Japan who have developed their rocket program, space program independently. But these nations, they took help of German scientists. So in the 20th century, you had all of this incredible progress happening at a very rapid pace. Quantum mechanics, quantum field theory, you had the space race. There was a geopolitical survival strategy, essentially. They were worried that whoever goes ahead in the space race will rule the world. That's why you had the moon race and so much more happening. This gave rise to so much advancement in technology, and which is why we are where we are today. So the 20th century was a pivotal era. It gave rise to so many new technologies, and it is what made the world what it is today. All the progress that we are enjoying today, 100 years ago, the world was very different. We did not even have the technologies that we have on the stage here and the lights over here. We did not have that in the year, let's say, 1895. We did not have X-rays. We did not have positron emission tomography, PET scans. We did not have computerized H-cell tomography, CAT scans, CAT scans, and so many more things. All the medical technology we enjoy today, which saves lives, which does so much for us, much of it comes from the principles of quantum mechanics and from quantum technology. Quantum mechanics applied in the sense of engineering and all that. So as you can see, the entire history of human progress is the history of scientific and technological progress. No culture can thrive, no society can thrive culturally, artistically, etc., without being materially prosperous. And material prosperity can only happen when you are scientifically advanced. So that is why science and technology are the key or critical to progress. Now, where are we today? In India, are we at the right stage? Are we doing the right things for scientific and technological advancement? We do have the best minds in the world. India is the oldest civilization, but we have the youngest and most energetic population in the world. Our average age is very low. And we have so many bright youngsters. We have so many Ramanujans waiting to be discovered, right? But do we have the right system to help us achieve the objectives that we want to achieve? First of all, the question I would like to ask is, do we understand the difference between science and what is non-science? Does our education system teach us the difference between science and philosophy, science and religion? I don't think it does. Let me explain the difference between science and philosophy. Science and philosophy both deal with theories and models of the universe. Science, philosophy, both deal with theories and models of the universe. But scientific theories have to be falsifiable. Philosophical theories can be speculative. What do I mean by that? Can you prove or disprove the existence of a soul? Can you prove or disprove the existence of God? You cannot. You can't prove it and you can't disprove it. Which is why soul and God and things like that, they belong to the realm of philosophy, not science. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying the categorization is not science. It is philosophy. Please understand this very critical difference. And once again, that is, if you look at the difference between philosophy and religion, philosophy deals with logic. Any philosophical theory has to be logically consistent. A religious theory is based on faith. There is no logic. There is logic at times, but often there is no logic. Which is why the dharmic systems are actually philosophical systems, not religious systems. Anyhow, so that is science and religion, science and philosophy understand the difference. And once again, we have to learn how to think scientifically. We have to understand what constitutes evidence in science and what does not constitute evidence in science. And this comes from ancient Indian wisdom. The most, the superior kind of evidence in science is called a pratyaksha pramana, observed data, observational evidence. Pratyaksha pramana is the superior form of evidence in science. Anuman, which means inference or logic, is secondary. It comes next in the hierarchy. And Shabda Praman, which means people's opinions, are not valid at all in science. Only Pratyaksha Praman is the highest of forms of evidence. So once we start thinking in this manner, we will develop the ability to think scientifically. And scientific thinking is the key to progress. We are all, I believe, in the scientific profession, medical profession, etc. It is important that we understand these differences. These categories are not taught to us in our education system. No one teaches the difference between science and philosophy or science and religion. And that's why lots of people are confused. So please understand this. So once again, let me reiterate that science is the key to all progress in humanity. The entire history of human progress is a history of scientific and technological advancement. And whenever a culture stops advancing scientifically or technologically, that culture declines and often disappears. So that is what I would like to speak about. And yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.